Alright, I've added to the plans. There were some errors and omissions, and they're still not complete because that section view isn't labeled. But this is not going to matter until we get through the zoning portion of this anyway, so I'm just continuing to work on those before I submit them as updated plans to the city or to the county. One of the first things I did was finalize those doors and transom windows at the living room area that opens onto the porch. And this was the door, okay, and they have 4 heights, okay, and you want to always have this shortest height, which is this 3168, and then these were going to be the side lights with the S, and AR means it's going to be, you know what, I think these are viewed from the exterior, so that is actually, that's going to be a 3168 AL, that middle door. And when I add up those 3 numbers, these are the door dimensions. When I add up this 30 and an eighth and the 36 and an eighth, I come up with a unit dimension. If those were all smashed together, presumably they can join them. I don't know how much space they use with their joining though. But when I add up those 3 numbers together, and I don't know how you mount that in a frame, but if it's a 1 unit, I assume it works. If it's all put together before it arrives at your place, it works. But when I add those up, those are 96 and 3/8 for a unit dimension. Now they show this as, and ours would be this one here, this ASL, because it's viewed from the exterior. So that's swinging in that way if that's how you want it, which is what we've been showing so far. But their triple put together unit, and maybe I don't know how they put this together. Okay, but they end up with about 94.5 for unit width. So that has to be actually sorted out with the manufacturer, whoever puts these together, because we have transoms going over. So if they don't have a transom that's going to align with these or make sense with these, then that has to be figured out at the end. But for now, what I'm showing are these transom units over these door units. And all the units are, of course, of Anderson brand. And what this requires, this installation, at least as far as I can tell, is the door unit is ordered like these 3 pieces put together already from the factory. And then you need to put a horizontal LVL 3.5 by 1.75 across here horizontally to hold those transoms up. And you can fasten that at the end with those Simpson header hangers, or you can probably just nail it, because I don't think, or integrate it into the trimmer, however you want to do it, but that'll need that horizontal LVL. So this won't be put together as a whole 6 unit thing. It'll be put together, hopefully, the 3 bottom units and then the 3 top units. But that was what is finally done on the windows for the moment, until we get to the point where we have to actually order those and make sure everything is perfect for that. And on those transoms, I looked these up, and some of the transoms have these thick sides and thick bottoms, and you can see how that impacts the glass. And that is so that these horizontally or vertically like this, the edges of these presumably lines up with the edges of your traditional doors down below. I ignored that, however, and went with the ones that have larger glass in them. And you can see, I mean, it's a substantial amount of glass you're losing if you go to the ones that are more perfectly aligned with those doors below. So these are the transom units I'm showing. And as they show here, the direct set transoms provide the maximum unobstructed glass. The next thing I did was work on these brackets and whether there was anything that could improve what's going on here, which these additional 8 brackets are all new. And so rather than have those made to match these, which a couple of these are mismatched anyway, I went to look at some alternatives for that, some possible improvement for that. And one of the things with these existing brackets is they're not really committed to a curve, and they're not really committed to a straight diagonal. And that's a pure radius there, but the way it dies into the bottom and dies into the top is not really, to me, is not really that ideal. And maybe that's a regular architectural thing. And it is apparently a regular architectural thing called a Thornton brace. And when I get this into my drawings, it's identical to what I've drawn. And maybe that bit not committed to an angle and not committed to a curve works a little better when you have a taller space like this with just that pergola out there. But when we begin to squeeze that space down with the railings vertically and make it shorter, I personally don't think it works as well as maybe something else might. Particularly since if we're going to replace those with straight PVC, rot-proof PVC, we're going to be into almost $400 a piece for those additional 8, plus we need about 6 on the regular structure. The wood ones from Pacific Columns are about a little less than half the price of the PVC ones. And if they're preserved and maintained, the wood would be fine as opposed to this PVC. But that'll be a call that'll actually have to be made. And there are obviously a whole host of variations on these, but I wanted to just see if I could get something with a little bit more of a curve and a little less of that straight angle piece. And if you just compare those two on the right, the Legacy and the Thornton, you kind of get a feel for what I'm talking about, with more of a curve on that Legacy and less of that straightness familiar with the Thornton. This is the Thornton, and they will make whatever you want, presumably for similar cost, just because of how it's done. So I would send them over a drawing of what I'm looking for, which is something that has a little more curve to it and a little less straightness. So that was that, and then I did a little bit more work on the ramp to the patio and some on the roof too, because that gutter going over there with no reason kind of bothered me a little, so I just horsed around with that on my own and put together like a glass roof covering for that, an optional glass or acrylic roof covering, because they had these things these are pretty inexpensive, but depending on how it's put together, I imagine the expense could increase. But I did want to just put it together just because I just wanted to. It was fun. So I only tried a couple different things just to see what the effect would be. The first thing I tried, both of them involving this true curve here where it ends at 90 here and 0 here. This first variation, which I call B, I made it taller than it is wide. So I shortened it up this way and increased its height that way. That was B. And then the next thing I did, so that was the Thornton, but I want a true curve on it, like this is shown. And the next thing I did is just made them both 28 by 5, and then I actually reduced their thickness to 4 inches so that we didn't have any issues with how they seam up on the edges of these columns. And I will just interject and cover these columns now. So far they've been shown just like the pergola columns are, straight 6x6s, which then have to somehow be stained or treated to match those, and we know that it's kind of difficult to paint this treated lumber right away. So, but if they're not that, they can be 4x4s that are clad to be that 5.5 inch by 5.5 inch finish. But that will also have to be kind of determined probably before we make the final plan, so we can just show 4x4s instead of 6x6s for that new column work. And this is just a really slight difference, as you can see in this, where these are the 24 wide by 28 high, and then this just makes them the 28 by 28, which is what you have, but these have more of a curve. And depending on your feedback, I will find where we can source these, and if the cost is similar to these ones with the true curve as opposed to the actual Thornton brace. And I also added brackets to this piece here because it seemed absent or remiss not to do that. A person may disagree, however, but that's what I did. And all of these following photographs are kind of just showing you these brackets just briefly. But before that, because I was putting these construction drawings together, I went to look at this here because this is a close call on the clearance for the 6/8 clearance underneath these beams or parts. And so I looked at this closer, and we're really close, and it does, those little two little corners there are intruding into the required 6/8 space. And this is coming down the stairs, and you can see it's just that little bit. That's the actual space you need coming up through 3 foot by 6 foot 8. When you zoom in on it, it is just those two little corners. If these brackets are done this way, these brackets could actually be shortened, but it doesn't matter because this piece is still going to be the same height here. So it's just those two little corners there, and if you're not inclined to worry about it, I'm not inclined to worry about it either, and I seriously doubt they're going to figure that out, that little scrap of wood at the corner. And this guy's 6'6", coming up through here with his hand on this hand railing, and you can see for the 6'6" guy it's a problem, but as soon as he gets down to 6'4", there's no problem at all. So you would have to make the call on whether that's okay or not. The other thing is with these corners, this is how this has to be done here. Now I finally settled on the ones that are only 4.5 inches thick this way and 28 high and 28 wide. But at these corners where they interface with these existing pergola columns, either they're going to be cut, manufactured larger than these ones with a bigger leg going this way, or manufactured, either way it's going to have a larger leg going this way. And then these 6x6s, ideally I would think that I would just cut into these solid 6x6s and have that new wood bracket interface that way. Not that that would be an easy thing to do, but the alternative is going to look kind of hokey and stuck on. So that's a concern there, but leaving it off is also a concern. And now this series from the outside showing these couple of bracket changes. This was where we were with these original, just replacing everything with Thornton braces, like what's on the existing pergola. And this was leaving everything off. This was adding in the ones that were 28 inches high and 24 wide. And then adding that to the stairway path as well. And then they just go to the straight 28 by 28 because that seems to make more sense. So I don't know whether that's a better look than that or not. Certainly when we get down to the 4-inch wide ones, which is what these ones are, it becomes less expensive. And I think it's a little less lighter too. I know I'm not showing on this first one I show with the trees, but this is particularly when they get to the 4 inches wide, I think it looks a little less heavy. And I think we need a little less heaviness if it's wherever it's possible over there. And they don't have a 4-inch or 4.5 inch, but with that 4-inch width, you also reduce some of the interface issues that you might have with these beams. I begin to assume that all of this just is constructed with Mirtec, and possibly these are PVC as well, or PVC, but otherwise it's all in cedar, and then these are just box beams, and these, I think these are just going to interface better that way. And here I actually did have ones with the trees with the new 4-inch by 28 by 28 modified Thornton brackets, and there's the existing, if we replaced everything with your existing 5.5-inch wide Thornton brackets. So yeah, in this context, I think that this is a better look than that. But you're the final arbiter of that. And next from this end, with the trees in, and these are the new brackets, the ones with the true curve, or the curve that ends the way I want to end. And I understand the Thornton bracket is going to be a more structural brace because of the way it ends. These are not nearly as structural as that Thornton brace, but they don't need to be. That's with the 4-inch. Yeah, these are all with the 4-inch 28-28. Those at $105 a piece in Western cedar. But I have to get with them and send them a drawing and see what it's going to take to put together what we want, which is going to be more than this, because we're going to be thicker this way. I'm positive of that, in order to get that true curve in there, that curve that ends the way I want to end. And a couple looks from way down the street. Should have had another light in the pergola area. And I know almost all these photos through here are continuing to show these doors with the panel at the bottom, but those doors have long been modified into matching what is at the rear door as close as possible. After those details had been worked out, I continued to do the construction drawings to see what it was going to take to accomplish our ramp and landing and stair, and how those details were going to come together. And some of these modifications I just did on my own, just for fun, particularly with regard to a glass roof or glass or acrylic roof structure that I put over this. The reason I did that glass structure, I was just experimenting, really just having fun, because I didn't like this gutter having no purpose over here except to make things look a little better here. So yeah, I kind of disliked that dishonesty, but I didn't feel there was another alternative to that, at least without going to some serious changes down through all of this piece. If you look at the landings first. This is what I worked on, one of the things I worked on first, in addition to the ramp and the framing and all the stuff required to get that done. And it does work out very nice, I will say that everything works out very nice in terms, even in terms of the interface of these 5.5 inch wide deck boards with this. And you may pick that up in the walkthrough that'll follow this at the very end. But I was working with that transition down to this patio area here. None of this is drawn, but we know what's happening over there. And first I made both of those stairs, that stair transition, I just made all of that curved. And the curved risers are no problem to make. That's just that vinyl AZEK, even 1/2 inch thick, that wraps around there pretty easily. And a person can, if they want to, get these actual curved boards to wrap around there. I didn't bother modeling that. I didn't think it was necessary, and I don't know how expensive they are. But probably just because I'm curious, I will look and see what it would take to do that and whether it looks better or not, just for the heck of it. But during that same time I was developing that glazed roof covering over this, where there's still area up under here and you still get airflow through there, but then you expand this covered space to the entire length of the structure. But you could tell here, and with regard to that gutter, I mean, these K-style gutters are meant to look like a molding, are meant to look like a crown mold. So it's not altogether invalid just to have the gutter without any additional roof structure over at this end. But you could see as it is, when I ran that gutter, I did show a little piece of this downspout also emptying into this one here. And I don't know, in the event that that happens, I don't know if this downspout that comes down here needs upgraded to a 3 inch by 4 inch or not. It's now 2 inch by 3 inch. Picks up this roof and that big plane there, and if you add anything here, a little bit there. But I did work with that and added this glazed structure, whether glass or acrylic, over it, and it would just be supported by what exists there. And I'm currently showing this in the drawings just because it looks better in elevation view when this line comes across and down. So I'm showing this as an option in both the floor plans and the elevation views in the current updated plans. But we can strike it all, but it's just because I think it will play better for any kind of thing we have to go before to get this passed, if possible. But I did work a little bit more with these stairs, as I said, and when I did this final kind of moves with those stairs, we actually increased this planter box, and this looks a lot better than it did before when it was like that. And we still have a 45 inch path through here and about a 39 inch path through here. So this was what I like this the best in terms of the final product, in terms of final solution to the thing. With or without, I like the glazed roofing, I'm not going to lie. I like the glazed roofing, but either of these I think will work fine. And so that's where we are right now at this point. The construction drawings are almost updated to the point where I would send them back over there. But I have to label that section A that's on sheet 2. All these parts need labeled through here, and that has not yet been done. But I am actually just kind of waiting for them to come back and refuse this zoning permit first, and then we will update all of the materials at that time. So that's where we are now. Thank you very much. As I said, it's been a delight. I looked at trying to improve this in any way possible, lifting these brackets. I could find no decent way to do that. So right now this is at the point where I'm the best I can do without, as I said, seriously taking apart things down through here. So that's all. Thank you again. Oh, I almost forgot. This is the walkthrough that I mentioned, and you should be able to pick up a lot of these different details that I've mentioned. Here, for example, is how I treated that door which is not exactly like the one in the kitchen is treated, but is maybe more closer to what is happening in that room itself. I'm showing that tree relocated to the west slightly because I don't see how it's done otherwise. We have to dig a foundation right at the bottom of that ramp as it is.